look at his music, a lot of his music, the 9 was involved because he saw it as something that would promote the success.
One After 909 and Revolution 9 were 2 songs written by Lennon and Paul McCartney before the Beatles called it quits after 9 years.
You got 9 years to 1961, that's 1970. It's the year the Beatles broke up.
9 years after he first met Paul, Lennon met Yoko Ono on November 9th, 1966. The couple's son, Sean, was born 9 years later on John's birthday, October 9th.
John and Yoko moved to the United States. It was in 1971. And of course, their address at the Dakota was 72nd Street. 7 + 2 is 9.
But Lennon's life would soon come to a nightmarish end. Did the number 9, which had brought so many good things to John Lennon's life, play a part in his premature demise?
If you are just joining us this morning, we bring you the sad, the tragic news that John Lennon was shot to death outside of his apartment in New York City.
In 1980, John Lennon was murdered in front of the Dakota by Mark David Chapman, 9 years after moving to New York.
Mr. Chapman came up behind him and called to him, "Mr. Lennon." He emptied the Charter Arms .38 caliber gun that he had with him.
He was pronounced officially dead at 11:07 p.m. 7 + 1 + 1 is 9.
He's not dead. John Lennon can't be dead.
But did the connection to the number 9 end there? Lennon died on December 8th, not the 9th, nearly 1 hour before midnight. But here's the strange part. The date in Liverpool was December 9th. Sadly, John Lennon's obsession had come full circle. When we come back, how did a cursed Hollywood screenplay spell the end for 5 Hollywood funny men?
No, I'm not going to go so far as to say that I killed Chris Farley.
Sudden death in Hollywood is nothing new. Movies die at the box office all the time. So do acting careers. But did a big screen comedy script play a major role in the real-life demise of 5 Hollywood funny men? At number 8 on the countdown is The Curse of the movie Attuck. In the late 1970s, a comedy script titled The Incomparable Attuck was making the rounds in Hollywood. The plot was simple. An overweight Eskimo from Alaska dreams of visiting the big city.
So many actors who've been associated with this project have died.
The script was written with only one performer in mind, John Belushi.
Well, you gotta suffer if you want to look good, you know?
The fateful choice may have doomed the project from the start.
He was reading it, he was preparing for it, and before he could even shoot it, he died.
His body was found after what the Los Angeles coroner determined was an overdose of cocaine and heroin.
Belushi was dead, but his spirit may still have had influence on the script. In medieval times, a book curse was used to inflict harsh punishment on anyone who took a manuscript from its rightful owner. A few years after Belushi's death, the screenplay was dusted off and handed to another actor.
It's comedy.
This time, comedy heavyweight Sam Kinison was cast in the title role.
Usually you get famous because you're funny, and then you destroy yourself. No, Sam did it the other way.
On the first day of production in 1987, Kinison panicked and locked himself in his hotel room.
And he said, "I'm not doing it the way it's written."
After half a day of work, the picture was scrapped.
When this movie went down, it was all over the news. It put his career in a tailspin.
2 years later, Sam Kinison died in a fiery car crash. Kinison would not be the last victim.
The supposed curse struck again in 1994.
I still wanted to make the movie. And they said, well, if you can get John Candy, we'll do it.
In other news, comic actor John Candy has died of a heart attack.
It was said that he was reading the script for the movie at the time that he died. That's kind of weird.
A couple of years later, I suggested we make it with Chris Farley.
Hi, I'm an idiot.
No, I'm not going to go so far as to say that I killed Chris Farley.
Chris Farley's body was found this afternoon in an apartment here in the John Hancock building. Chicago police, who confirmed the death, have nothing to say about how long he'd been there or what might have been the cause of death.
What if this curse really is real?
But the cursed script was spreading like a deadly virus, passed on from one victim to the next. Before he died, Chris Farley is said to have handed the script to Phil Hartman, another Saturday Night Live cast member.
I just want to say that greed is a terrible, terrible thing. It's one of the 7 deadly sins.
1 year later, Hartman was dead, shot by his wife in a tragic murder-suicide.
Whether it's a curse, I don't know, but there's definitely a dark pall that's been cast over this project.
The script hasn't been touched in years. It's been shelved in the archives of United Artists. It's still a killer script, and if the film is ever produced, the leading role is available for any actor who dares.
When I started this interview, I told you I wasn't superstitious and I didn't believe in curses. I now do.
In 1992, Anna Nicole Smith joined the exclusive ranks of the Playboy Playmates. But 15 years later, the blonde bombshell joined a far more unfortunate club, the Sisterhood of Dead Centerfolds. As the stories of Playmates who died under tragic and mysterious circumstances have mounted, the question has arisen. Are the beauties featured in the foldouts tempting a dark fate? At number 7 on our list, the Centerfold Curse. Since Playboy magazine began publishing in the 1950s, scores of beautiful young women have bared all for the magazine's centerfold. Anna Nicole Smith is the brashest blonde of them all.
I love you.
Anna Nicole died tragically of a drug overdose at age 39. Hers is the latest chapter in a much larger and more haunting mystery.
A lot of people think there's a curse on Playboy centerfolds. There's been 25 centerfolds who have died.
The curse, if one exists, began with the biggest headline-grabbing Playmate death of them all, Marilyn Monroe, cover girl for the very first issue. Monroe died at 36 of a mysterious drug overdose.
The chemical dependency, the champagne and sleeping pills caught up with her.
The next centerfold to meet an untimely end was Jane Mansfield, Miss February 1955. On the outside, Jane seemed to have it all, but inside, the busty blonde movie star was suffering.
I have wonderful, happy moments, but I think a person who is tremendously complicated and involved, I don't think that person would ever, really be a contented, happy person.
By 1967, Mansfield was desperate to find happiness by advancing her career. But did she use her smoldering good looks to cut a deal with the dark side? Mansfield became close, some say too close, to the leader of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey.
She would call my grandfather at all hours of the day and night. They spent more and more time together. She ended up sort of taking my grandfather on as personal and spiritual consultant.
34-year-old Mansfield may have sensed that something wasn't right. She decided to cut her ties to LaVey and the church.
When she left the church, Anton LaVey goes to her and he says, look, I put a curse on your boyfriend, Sam Brody, so don't be alone with him. She didn't think anything of it. Several weeks later, they were driving in Louisiana, and the car they were in smashed into the back of a tanker truck that was spraying for mosquitoes.
Jane Mansfield died instantly and gruesomely. The centerfold was nearly decapitated. Was it the devil collecting his debt?
It is a fact that just before discovering that Jane had died in that automobile accident, that my grandfather had cut an article out of a newspaper and turned it over to find out that he had accidentally cut her head out of the flip side of the page.
But Mansfield wouldn't be the last centerfold to meet an untimely death. In 1980, just months after becoming Playmate of the Year, 21-year-old Dorothy Stratton was viciously killed by her estranged husband. In a jealous rage, Paul Snyder bound Dorothy to her bed, shot her in the face, then committed suicide. Car accidents, drug overdoses, murders. In all, 25 glamorous Playmates have died too soon, which brings up the question, is it a curse to be beautiful? When we return, did a lyrical love note to the devil unleash a chaotic curse on this band of Brits?
When you reverse that, you hear a voice that says, here's to my sweet Satan.
Led Zeppelin. Some consider them the greatest rock band of all time. But was Led Zeppelin making music for the devil? Coming in at number 6 on the list, the Led Zeppelin curse.
There's always an urban legend around Led Zeppelin. They had sold their souls to the devil to become the biggest rock band ever.
Many say the devil made his bargain with one band member in particular, guitarist Jimmy Page.
We knew we were appreciated by the fact that people were coming along to see us in such great, vast numbers.
Jimmy Page always had a fascination in magic. He never at any time claimed that he was a Satanist or worshiped the devil.
But Page has certainly explored the subject. For proof, some fans look no further than Page's most famous composition, Stairway to Heaven.
Some rock records contain hidden messages which can be heard when the records are played backwards.
The very first phrase, when you reverse, if there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now. When you reverse that, you hear a voice that says, here's to my sweet Satan.
Jimmy Page had a deep fascination with 20th century occultist Aleister Crowley, a bizarre leader of secret societies, famous for conducting blood-soaked rituals.
Jimmy was obsessed with Aleister Crowley, and he eventually bought his mansion in Scotland and lived in it, and bought a big cape of his and wore it around.
After Page bought the mansion in the early 1970s, misfortune seemed to bite at the band's heels.
John Paul Jones had broken a finger on his left hand, which made it impossible for him to play bass, so a tour was canceled.
In 1977, while Led Zeppelin was on tour in New Orleans, lead singer Robert Plant found out his son had died.
Was it simply Page's infatuation with black magic, or a run of bad luck?
What does Jimmy Page being into the devil have to do with Robert's young son having an intestinal infection and dying? Really, what is there? What connection could there be?
But for those who believe in the curse, there was another victim. John Bonham, the band's explosive drummer, died in his sleep. Bonham choked on his own vomit after an all-day drinking binge. Again, Page took the rap.
Jimmy Page never believed in a curse. And of course, a lot of people were fascinated that it didn't touch Jimmy Page. I mean, everybody else was affected with it, but not Page.
A demon car fiendishly takes the lives of 2 men, then wreaks havoc with others who got too close. Sounds like the plot of a Stephen King novel. But this chilling tale was an all-too-real tragedy. In the 5 spot on the list of curses, James Dean's death car. James Dean's 1955 Porsche Spyder was the fastest car on the road. Dean hired famed Hollywood car designer George Barris to customize the silver 2-seater.
This car was a very exceptional part of his life. He loved to race, he wanted to race.
Do you have any special advice for the young people who drive?
Take it easy driving. The life you might save might be mine.
13 days later, James Dean was dead. The 24-year-old was behind the wheel of his Porsche Speedster when he swerved to avoid an oncoming car. Dean was laid to rest, but his smashed-up Roadster continued to have a sinister life of its own. George Barris bought the battered wreck for $2,500, and a series of unexplained tragedies ensued.
In San Jose, a guy got behind the trailer, wanted to see the car come down, broke his legs. We went into Fresno, and before I went to the show, it was in a building, the building burnt down.
Even in pieces, the cursed auto seemed out for blood. Barris sold some of the car's parts to a doctor named Troy McHenry.
And the first time he took the car out to race it, he was killed in a car accident where he loses control of the car and hits a tree.
What happened next remains a mystery.
Eventually, the car was sent to Miami for an exhibit, and then the car disappeared. It never got back. Whether it went by truck or by train, whatever, the car never returned.
Barris built a replica of the original Speedster, but the James Dean death car has never been found. After the break, did demonic forces possess the production of this Hollywood cult classic?
They fractured my lower back, so the screaming and yelling is real.
If ever a film could conjure its own set of demons, it would be The Exorcist. The haunting 1973 thriller about a young girl possessed by the devil literally scared theatergoers out of their seats. But for every frightening on-screen shocker, an even more disturbing drama played out behind the scenes. Coming in at number 4, The Curse of the Exorcist. Based on a 1971 novel by William Peter Blatty, the story was inspired by a real-life exorcism that took place in the 1940s.
He said the point of his writing The Exorcist was to let people know that evil is real.
But if you mess with the devil, you're bound to get burned. After shooting began, the cast and crew were plagued by a series of unfortunate disasters.
One of the sets burned down, and the carpenter cut off his thumb, and Ellen Burstyn had a terrible back injury.
The film's young star, Linda Blair, was also injured during a violent scene on a moving bed.
Basically, they fractured my lower back. Yeah, so the screaming and yelling is real.
Then, the curse turned deadly. Actor Jack McGowan died of a heart attack just after his character was killed off in the film. In total, 9 people connected with the movie died during its making.
The spirits that are negative, that are demonic, do not want a film like The Exorcist to be released.
The movie's director wasn't taking any chances.
William Friedkin thought, well, we have priests who are technical advisors and priests who are actors. Let's get one of them to exorcise the set.
I remember them giving a blessing there and sprinkling everybody with holy water.
The movie opened on the day after Christmas, 1973. Audiences were in for more than the typical viewing experience.
People would start to get sick, they would faint, they'd have to be taken out of the cinema.
The Exorcist spawned 2 sequels. Exorcist II opened in 1977 without incident. But in 1990, Exorcist III had an even more sinister and deadly impact than the original. Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer, was obsessed with the 3rd Exorcist film.
He liked to pick up guys in bars and bring them back for a late-night watching of Exorcist III.
It took more and more deviant-type behaviors to satisfy my urges.
Dahmer was responsible for the grisly deaths of at least 17 men. When the book closed on the Exorcist franchise, the final count was 9 dead, more than a dozen injured, and 2 fires. Perhaps that's what you get when you mess with the devil. Murder, satanic cults, a beautiful young woman and her baby sacrificed to the devil. Was this a horror film or a chilling real-life drama? For director Roman Polanski, the line between truth and fiction was often difficult to distinguish. But was it more than bad luck at the heart of Polanski's outrageous misfortune? On our list at number 3, The Polanski Curse.
People say that Polanski is cursed just because he's had a life which has far more unpleasant, cruel coincidences than most people would expect in one lifetime.
By the time he was a teenager, Roman Polanski had already suffered through tremendous personal tragedy.
He grew up during the Holocaust, he witnessed atrocities, he was orphaned.
But by 1968, 36-year-old Polanski had made it to Hollywood. He married 25-year-old actress Sharon Tate, and by 1969, the couple were expecting a baby. The director was enjoying the success of his dark thriller, Rosemary's Baby. The film starred Mia Farrow as a young woman expecting her first child who unknowingly becomes the target of a satanic cult.
I shot the last scene, a phone booth scene, in pitch hysteria.
There was talk of Polanski's being in contact with Church of Satan leader Anton LaVey as research for the film.
My grandfather is said to have played the part of the devil who rapes Rosemary.
LaVey's involvement has never been confirmed, and when asked about rumors his movie was cursed, Polanski called the idea ridiculous. Then, on the night of August 8th, 1969, one of the greatest evils ever unleashed in Hollywood arrived at Polanski's doorstep. Sharon, their unborn child, and 4 house guests were butchered in a chilling late-night murder spree.
The body is badly mutilated.
This I'd rather not discuss.
You see a lot of blood all over the place. Cradles, baby clothes.
Years later, Susan Atkins, a former Church of Satan member, spelled out in gruesome detail how she slaughtered Sharon Tate.
She asked me to let her baby live.
What'd you say to her?
I told her that I didn't have any mercy on her.
Atkins claimed she and her accomplices were acting on the orders of criminal mastermind Charles Manson.
What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here.
Eerie similarities between the Rosemary's Baby storyline and the shocking murder were difficult to ignore.
Rosemary's Baby is all about a pregnant woman and a strange cult of Satanists. And really, that's very similar to what happened with the Manson murders. I mean, Sharon Tate was 8 months pregnant at the time of her death.
How do you feel about this new charge, Charlie?
Today's a good day. Every day is a good day.
Why you talk?
Manson was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In 1977, nearly a decade after Sharon's grisly murder, Polanski could not escape the dark shadow of the curse.
Polanski was booked here at the West Los Angeles police station for forcible rape of a minor female.
The 44-year-old Polanski pled guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old. But he fled the country to France just hours before his sentencing. He has yet to return to the United States. When we come back, what chilling mistake cursed this scary movie and caused the death of its cast?
Producers actually used real skeletons.
I began to get very creeped out.
They're here. Possibly two of the most chilling words in movie history. Poltergeist, a petrifying tale about angry spirits who terrorize a suburban family, became an instant horror classic in 1982. But behind the scenes, makers of the frightening film may have unwittingly unleashed a deadly curse. At number 2 on the countdown, the Poltergeist Curse. There's one thing every scary moviegoer knows. You don't mess with the dead. The big screen family in Poltergeist learned that lesson the hard way. From the get-go, producers may have unknowingly taunted the spirit world. In one of the film's creepier moments, Jo Beth Williams winds up in the backyard swimming pool with a group of recently unearthed skeletons.
It turned out that the film producers actually used real skeletons, and so the curse was seen as like a retribution for that.
Cast and crew talk about scary things happening on and off the set. Jo Beth Williams reportedly came home each day to find her pictures askew on the wall.
I began to get very creeped out. Somebody trying to send me a message.
Curses on those who disturb the dead go back to the days of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, but it appeared the same hexes held true in Hollywood. Poltergeist premiered in June 1982 and became one of the highest-grossing horror movies of all time. But beyond the box office, the curse may have led several of the film's cast members to an early grave.
There were so many deaths connected with the film that just seemed to go beyond the bounds of coincidence.
Months after the film's release, Dominique Dunne, the 22-year-old actress who played the family's eldest daughter, was killed in one of Hollywood's most shocking crimes. On October 30th, Dominique was strangled to death by her ex-boyfriend.
This guy, this big man, grabbed her by the neck and picked her up off her feet, this little girl, and carried her to the next yard.
Dominique's killer was convicted of manslaughter and served less than 4 years in prison. But the curse wouldn't rest until it got what it wanted. 3 years later, during the filming of the movie's first sequel, problems on the set caused some cast and crew to wonder if there might actually be a poltergeist at play.
There were a series of other events, less dramatic, accidents, fires, casualties, that suggest that there were unusual forces at work behind the scenes.
Actor Will Sampson was a Creek Indian and a shaman. He believed it was necessary to perform an exorcism on the set.
And he went in there and did this Cherokee Crow cleansing ceremony. And there wasn't any problem after that.
But not for long. Months before the film's 1986 release, 60-year-old actor Julian Beck died from stomach cancer. Will Sampson was next. He died from complications after a heart and lung transplant operation. He was 53. Poltergeist 3 began shooting that spring under a cloud of concern for the film's youngest star. Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, was suffering from a mysterious illness.
She had a kind of a strange stomach complaint, a bowel obstruction that was just previously undiagnosed, rushed to hospital in the middle of the night, and simply died completely out of the blue.
Heather was just 12 years old. A swirl of controversy surrounded her death, but the studio decided to release the film anyway. It was a box office bust. Heather O'Rourke was laid to rest in the same cemetery as her screen sister, Dominique. After 4 deaths, plus a number of accidents, fires, and mishaps, the trilogy was finished. To date, there are no plans for a Poltergeist 4. Coming up, did conjuring up dark forces invite death and destruction onto the set of this big-budget blockbuster?
It was found at the foot of the bed.
It actually made 2 full flips, landed on its roof.
We'll reveal the #1 Hollywood curse when Doomed to Die returns. Even before The Dark Knight hit theaters in July 2008, the buzz around the movie was epic. But behind these headlines, another story was quickly unfolding. Some speculated this dark and disturbing comic book tale had stirred up its own dangerous forces. Would its stars pay the ultimate price? Coming in at #1, The Curse of the Dark Knight. The latest Batman to hit the big screen wasn't just dark, it was downright creepy. But did dwelling on the dark side invite actual demons onto the set?
So far, all the principals have been involved in some bad luck. So if that's not a curse, then I'm not sure what is.
Curse or coincidence? The tragedies are undeniable. The first unlucky incident occurred several months into shooting. A stuntman was killed while testing a car for the film.
The stunt technician, Conrad Wycliffe, was involved in an on-set accident. He was in the back of a truck, and the truck slammed into a tree, and he was killed.
But another tragedy was in the making. At the heart of The Dark Knight was one of movie history's most sinister villains.
The Joker is all about anarchy. It's all about chaos. He wants to just burn Gotham City down and dance on the ashes.
Heath Ledger summoned all his inner darkness to bring the Joker to life.
Heath is one of those actors that really, really embodies a role. And to get into the mind of the Joker, it started to mess with his own psyche.
And he went straight into that character, and I'd never seen it before. It frightened the hell out of me.
But the creepy character began to haunt Ledger in real life.
He was having sleepless nights, insomnia issues.
Not long after shooting was complete, Ledger was found dead in his Manhattan apartment.
The actor was found by a masseuse and housekeeper on Tuesday afternoon.
It was a shocking end to a life filled with so much promise.
It's double tragedy because not only did we lose this very talented actor, but of course he has a daughter by Michelle Williams, little Matilda. And it's very sad because Matilda will never get to know her father except through his films.
Ledger's death only ramped up the public's curiosity about the film.
Even before The Dark Knight came out, there was a lot of talk that the movie was cursed. Then, right when the movie was coming out, Christian Bale had this run-in with the law.
While the movie was shattering box office records, Bale was being questioned by police in London after his mother and sister filed assault allegations against him.
He's got the summer's hottest movie, but Christian Bale is in the headlines this morning after a reported assault here in London.
Bale denied the accusations, and no charges were brought against him.
And everyone thought, oh wow, here we go, the Dark Knight curse is living on.
Then, nearly 3 weeks later, 71-year-old Morgan Freeman, who played Bruce Wayne's right-hand man, had his own near-fatal brush with death.
Morgan Freeman is driving with a friend a little shortly before midnight on a rural stretch of highway in Mississippi.
It actually made 2 full flips, landed on its roof, and then rolled back over. jaws of life had to be brought in to extricate the two occupants out of the car.
Now, of course, he ended up to be okay. Luckily, no one died, but it definitely kept people believing that there is some sort of curse with the Dark Knight.
2 men dead and another seriously injured. Was it a Dark Knight curse or just a series of very unlucky coincidences? Let's hope the sequel puts the rumors to rest. From superheroes to centerfolds, curses are making some of Hollywood's hottest stars think twice.
If people are involved with a project that may have a curse on it, what they're going to do is try to do everything they can to be different than the previous project.
And if the role is juicy enough, the stars can simply cross their fingers and watch their backs.